Keelan woke me up in the morning and said, "You're gonna meet a prince today."
Keelan tells me in the car that I have to do what I do for Jeffrey for Prince Andrew.
I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. If something happens to me, for the sake of my family, do not let this go away.
24 hours after Virginia sat in front of a camera and said all of that out loud, she was gone. And the manuscript she'd spent months building, the one with the names, the timelines, the locations, the transactions, seemed to vanish with her. But that's the part almost nobody is connecting. Before we get into what happened to Virginia, before we talk about the missing pages, the timing, the people who quietly left the country, we need to stop and look closely at what she was actually saying. Because her testimony wasn't broad, it wasn't blurry, it wasn't emotional guesswork. It was precise. Precise in a way that would make powerful, protected people deeply uncomfortable. Virginia wasn't describing a vague feeling. She wasn't loosely recalling the past. She was describing specific mornings. Mornings when Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly woke her up and handed her instructions like a schedule. Who she would meet, where she would go, and what would be expected of her when she got there.
I was so young. Keelan woke me up in the morning and said, "You're gonna meet a prince today." I didn't know at that point that I was going to be to that prince.
Think about the weight of that for a second. She didn't wake up that morning understanding what was waiting for her. She was 17 years old, and by her account, she was being scheduled the way you schedule a meeting, the way you block time on a calendar. Ghislaine Maxwell, who presented herself publicly as a socialite, an ocean activist, a polished woman moving through elite circles, was described in Virginia's testimony as something very different. A coordinator, a handler, someone allegedly managing the movement of young girls with chilling efficiency. And the prince Virginia said she was about to meet, she did not dance around that. She did not say someone royal or someone close to the palace. She named him directly on camera.
That night, Prince Andrew came to her house in London, and we went out to Club Tramp. Prince Andrew got me alcohol. It was in the VIP section. I'm pretty sure it was vodka. Prince Andrew was like, "Let's dance together."
She described the venue. She described the section of the club. She described the drink. She described who initiated contact. That is not how fabricated stories are usually told. That is how lived experiences often sound when someone has carried the details for years. And the part many people skip over in Virginia's interview is what came next. Because the moment she described leaving that club is the moment the machinery behind the entire operation becomes visible.
And Keelan said he's coming back to the house, and I want you to do for him what you do for Epstein.
There it is. In one sentence, the system is exposed, not hinted at, not suggested, exposed. According to Virginia's account, this was not some isolated encounter. It was a structure. It had rules, it had roles, it had language, it had a chain of command. And that brings us to the question people always ask when they hear testimony like this. Why didn't she leave? Why didn't she go straight to the police? But that question only makes sense if you misunderstand how these systems actually trap people. Because what kept Virginia inside, at least by her own telling, was not just physical force. It was something more calculated than that. Psychological control designed to make escape feel impossible without anyone ever having to lay a hand on you. Virginia said Jeffrey Epstein told her directly that the Palm Beach Police Department was under his control. Not hinted, not implied, said directly.
Jeffrey Epstein tells me he owns the Palm Beach Police Department. And I can't remember when he tells me this again, but he told me, "I know where your little brother goes to school." So I mean, like, when you talk about psychological fear, it's not like they put a gun to my head and said, "Do this or die." It was these invisible chains that I talk about that kept you complacent, kept you there.
Your brother's school. That's the detail that should stop you cold. Because that is not a vague threat. That is a man allegedly telling a teenage girl exactly where her family is vulnerable, calmly, deliberately, as a reminder of who holds power. And according to Virginia, these were not isolated moments. This was part of a pattern. Every time there was even the slightest sign that someone might step out of line, the pressure returned. And it wasn't used only on Virginia. She suggested it was used across the network. That is how you build a prison without walls. You convince people there is nowhere to run, nowhere to report, no system left untouched, and that even trying to speak would cost them everything. And while Virginia says she was being held inside that world through psychological terror, the outside world was being fed an entirely different story.
It took a lot of people involved. It took doctors, psychiatrists, gynecologists, dentists, all these people knew what was going on. Hairstylists, I mean, the list goes on. I could keep going on and on and on. Drivers, chauffeurs, butlers, housemaids. It took all of these people turning a blind eye.
Let that sit for a moment. Doctors, psychiatrists, gynecologists, hairstylists, drivers, housemaids. The list keeps going. If Virginia's account is accurate, this was not a hidden operation run by 2 or 3 people in the dark. It was an open secret sustained by people who showed up to work, collected their checks, saw what was happening, and stayed silent. And Virginia knew that. She said it clearly. She wasn't hidden away. She wasn't invisible. She was there, in plain sight. And the people who could have said something didn't. For years, Virginia did what the system expected her to do. She stayed quiet. She tried to protect her family. She tried to survive. She tried to build some version of a life after it. But eventually, silence became its own danger. And when she finally decided to speak, she didn't stop at one interview. She started writing everything down. The book reportedly had 2 working titles during development: The Billionaire's Playboy Club, and later, Nobody's Girl. Even those titles tell you what kind of document this was becoming. Not a soft memoir, not a reflective journal, a record, a structured account of names, dates, locations, people, acts, transactions. According to her co-author, the material was detailed enough to function as a roadmap for investigators, for journalists, for anyone trying to understand the full shape of the network. Some of it surfaced, but the sections that reportedly went further, the parts she had not fully said on camera, the pages that named more, connected more, revealed more, disappeared around the same time she did. And that timeline is hard to ignore. Virginia gave her final interview. Within 24 hours, she was dead. And within that same window, crucial parts of the manuscript were suddenly gone from the people who had them.
Virginia Giuffre, the most prominent victim of the late convicted Jeffrey Epstein, took her own life on Thursday. This is just weeks after she made headlines for saying that she had days to live after she claimed to have been hit by a bus.
Weeks before her death, there were already headlines about her saying she had only days left after reportedly being hit by a bus. And even before that, she had publicly stated that she was not suicidal. She told her therapist. She told her GP. She put it on the record because she understood how vulnerable she was and what it might look like if something happened to her.
I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me, for the sake of my family, do not let this go away. Too many evil people want to see me quieted.
She wrote that publicly. She named her therapist. She named her GP. She was creating a trail in real time because she seemed to believe the danger was real. And then she was gone. And the manuscript was gone. And now people are left trying to reconstruct what she knew from fragments, from whatever survived. If Virginia were the only person to speak out and then die while key evidence disappeared, maybe some would call it a tragic anomaly. But that's what makes this story so unsettling. Many people believe she was not the only one. Because the pattern people keep pointing to of speaking out, then sudden silence, evidence that disappears exactly when it matters most, has shown up again and again around the edges of this world, and the same names, industries, and inner circles keep resurfacing. Take the case of Stephen T-Witch Boss, longtime executive producer and DJ on the Ellen DeGeneres show. He was someone who spent years inside that environment, close enough to see what happened behind the scenes. Then, according to reports and claims that circulated after his death, there were allegations that he had left behind recordings and written material describing things he had witnessed. Material that painted a much darker picture than the show's public image ever suggested. There were also claims that shortly before his death, he posted something cryptic online. Something some observers connected to coded language that has appeared in reporting around Epstein-related communications.
On Tuesday morning, he had not checked out. Checkout time was 11 a.m. So management went to knock on the door around 11:15, and it was then that a housekeeper discovered his body in the room.
He was found in a motel room, checked in under his own name, with his phone reportedly switched to airplane mode so no one could reach him. Reports said his note referenced personal struggles, but the exact contents of that note were never fully made public. And the alleged voice message, the one some claimed contained the most sensitive information about what he had seen and heard, never surfaced publicly either. And that's what people can't stop noticing. The pieces that could explain the most are often the very pieces that disappear, while the people closest to them are the ones who end up gone.
He was going through so much, and he was hiding so much, and there must have been a lot of shame in that. And he was wrestling with a lot inside himself, and he was trying to self-medicate and cope with all those feelings because he didn't want to put it on anyone.
That, of course, is the public version. personal pain, internal darkness, private struggle, and maybe parts of that are true. But when you place that beside the claims that a recording with potentially explosive content never reached the public, the official framing starts to feel incomplete to many observers. Virginia warned publicly that too many evil people wanted her quiet. Then she was gone, which, according to online speculation and disputed reports, may have tried to signal something. Then that signal vanished too. That is why people keep calling this a pattern. And whether you agree or not, it is a pattern many cannot ignore. But to understand why this hits so hard, we have to return to Virginia's own words. Because in the rush to talk about her death, people often skip over what she was actually saying. And what she described was disturbing on a level that goes far beyond one man. She repeatedly suggested that Epstein was not the whole story, that he was simply the visible face of something much larger. A system wrapped in legal power, political power, social power, financial power. A system that protected itself. A system fed by multiple industries. According to another alleged victim, documents still exist that could fill in major gaps. Record survivors need not only for legal reasons, but simply to understand what was done to them. Think about that. A survivor says the government may hold records of what happened to her. Records she herself cannot access. The files exist, they're being kept, and the people who need them most are locked out. Another victim described the conditions on Epstein's island in terms that strip away the glamour, the jets, the mansions, the celebrity names, and reveal something much darker underneath.
I have spent the last 17 years in my own prison for what she, Jeffrey, and all the co-conspirators did to me. I was raped repeatedly. I was raped 3 times a day sometimes. And I was not the only girl on that island. There was a constant stream of girls being over and over and over again. And yes, Ghislaine must be in prison because I've been in hell and back for the last 17 years.
And 27 for me.
I was 10 years old when Liz Stein was being raped. I was 10. That is how long this trafficking ring has been going.
She said she was prepared to risk death in the water rather than spend one more night on that island. That is the reality survivors have tried to describe beneath the polished image Jeffrey Epstein sold to the world. And Virginia Giuffre was attempting to put that same reality on record, publicly, clearly, with names attached. Her book could have given all of its structure, shape, permanence, something that couldn't easily be walked back. And then suddenly it was gone, and so was she.
I want to start by saying it's not how Jeffrey died, but it's how he lived. And we need to get to the bottom of everybody who was involved with that.
That was Virginia's point. Not how he died, how he lived. She seemed to understand better than almost anyone outside that network that Epstein's death did not end the story. The story was the decades-long operation, the enablers, the participants, the protectors, the people who looked away, and she was building that case piece by piece, interview by interview, chapter by chapter, until she wasn't. And what makes this land differently now is that we are no longer only dealing in rumor about what the Epstein files might contain. Documents have been released, flight logs, internal communications, investigative material. And what has emerged has, in the eyes of many, reinforced what survivors like Virginia spent years trying to say. The records paint a picture of a man deeply embedded in elite circles, entertainment, fashion, academia, politics, communicating in ways that many found disturbing, moving through those worlds with extraordinary confidence. Confidence so extreme that, according to reporting, he appeared to believe the system around him would continue protecting him indefinitely. And for a very long time it did. But as more files began surfacing and more names started circulating, something else happened. People moved, quietly, quickly. The departure of certain high-profile figures from the United States, especially those whose names had been linked in public discussion to the broader Epstein orbit, began to attract attention almost as soon as document releases became a major focus.
Ellen DeGeneres and her wife, Portia de Rossi, have reportedly fled the US, bound for the UK, after Donald Trump's landslide victory. Numerous publications are reporting the couple have left the United States permanently. There are also reports the couple have put their Montecito mansion on the market. Entertainment publication Wrap has the exclusive story and said, Ellen DeGeneres and wife Portia de Rossi have moved to rural England, put their Montecito estate on the market, and plan to never return to the United States. telling friends the election of Donald Trump was their primary motivation.
The public explanation may be politics. The election may be the headline. But according to claims from people who say they understand how those circles operate, some of these exits were being planned long before the election result was known. And when you stack the timing side by side, the files, the departures, Virginia's death, the disappearance of key manuscript sections, people see more than coincidence. They see a timeline. Virginia sat in front of a camera and described the morning Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly woke her up and told her she was going to meet a prince. She described the car ride. She described what was expected of her. She described the VIP section, the vodka, the dance floor, the return to the house, and what happened after. She described all of it because she appeared to believe that if the truth was spoken clearly enough, publicly enough, specifically enough, it would finally matter. And then, 24 hours later, she was dead. Her manuscript was incomplete in the places that may have been the most damaging. An alleged voice from inside another powerful machine never reached the public, and people who knew their names might surface reportedly put homes on the market and disappeared overseas. Virginia told the world what she said she saw. She gave names, places, patterns, mechanisms, costs, and the question that still hangs in the air, the question no one in authority seems especially eager to answer, is brutally simple. Who made sure she would never tell us more?
They've been accused by a multitude of women of a multitude of wrongdoings, and nothing has happened to any of them.
Nothing. Not yet. But the files are out. The names are in circulation. And whatever the cost to her, Virginia made sure the world heard her voice before it could be lost. If you believe she deserved better than this, if you believe all of them did, then the very least you can do is refuse to let what they said disappear again. Like this video. Share it. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because this story is not over. Not even close.